Here's one of my all-time favorite stories. Many years ago, one of the former chief rabbis of England, Emanuel Jacobowitz, got a phone call from the Queen of England's representatives to tell him that in recognition of his years of service to England, the Queen was going to knight him. He was going to become a lord. And after the ceremony, there'd be a dinner in his honor, kosher caterer, of course, and he was allowed to invite 75 or so of his closest friends and family members. One of the first things that Rabbi Jacobowitz did was to call his longtime friend, Abba Dunner. Mr. Dunner was a well-known businessman and community activist, spent his life working on behalf of the Jewish people. And so the rabbi called Abba to tell him good news and bad news. He said, good news is, I just got a call from the Queen's representatives. Incredibly enough, the Queen is going to knight me. I'm going to become a lord. And there's going to be a dinner in my honor, and I'm allowed to invite 75 of my closest friends and relatives. Abba Dunner said, Mazel tov, fantastic. Whenever dinner is, I'm available. I'll be there. And the rabbi said, that's the bad news. You're not going to be there. What do you mean, Rabbi? He said, look, Dunner, you know, you're a world-class character and personality. You're practically a comedian. There's no way I'm inviting you. I am not going to be worried during the entire dinner that you're going to cause some spectacle or do some stunt that's going to embarrass me. So you're not invited. You're not on the invitation list. And Dunner protested, but the rabbi stuck to his guns and did not put Dunner on the invitation list. Comes the night of the ceremony. The Queen drops her scepter or whatever it is she does when she knights someone. Rabbi Jacobowitz becomes Lord Rabbi Jacobowitz, and they sit down to the ceremonial dinner. And early on in the dinner, while the newly minted Lord is eating his soup, he hears a voice from behind him. It's the waiter. And the waiter leans in and says to him, would your lordship like another knadle? And he turns around, and sure enough, it's Dunner in a tuxedo acting as a waiter at the dinner. Because Dunner, of course, had figured out who the kosher caterer was and convinced them to allow him to be a waiter for the evening. Why am I telling you this story? Because if you and I want to meet the Queen of England, we have to either know someone who's being knighted or know the caterer if it's a kosher event. Very unlikely. Personally, I kept waiting for the last several months to get my invitation to the royal wedding, but it never arrived in the mail. I'm guessing you probably didn't get one either. Instead, I was relegated to watching video clips of the fantastic ceremony and spectacle, particularly that gospel choir, which was unbelievable.
When the night has come and the land is dark, no, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid.
Which brings us to this week's Torah portion. We're taught the laws of the Nazir, and we're told that a man or a woman at any time can take a vow of Nazirus, can vow to become a Nazir, in which case they can't drink wine or eat grapes or grape products, they can't cut their hair, and they cannot come into contact with a corpse, even for a burial, even for a close relative. The only exception is a mace mitzvah. If someone dies and there's no one else to do the burial, then the Nazir can do it. There's only one other Jew that has that same din, that same law in Judaism, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest himself. So what's the message? God's telling the Jews, you might be worried. We've taught the laws of the Levium, the Levites, and the Kohanim, the priests, and the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. So if you're not a Levi, or if you're a Levi who's not a Kohen, if you're a Kohen who's not the Kohen Gadol, you might say, I didn't win the genetic lottery. Especially somebody who's from one of the other 11 tribes. So I'm not part of the royal family, and I don't have that connection, and I can't get to that level of spirituality. Never the twain shall meet. And God's saying no. Anybody, man or woman, at any time can take that vow, can take the vow to remove themselves partially and temporarily from physical pleasures and from society, to work on their relationship with God, and then to come back into society and come back to regaining access to those pleasures and use those to further and better and elevate their relationship to God. And when they do that during that time period, they gain the same spiritual level, at least in one area, as the Kohen Gadol, as the high priest. So don't ever feel that there's the royal family and then there's us. No, we all have access to royalty as Jews. And think about it. Some of our greatest leaders in Jewish history have come from incredibly humble backgrounds, impoverished families, not families of great fame or renown or lineage. Some started very late. Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest sages, didn't start studying at all until he was 40 years old. So realize that. It's never too little and it's never too late.